The goal of today is two things. Number one, I want you to know that there are so many resources for you. The two most popular things that I hear when it comes to why people can't eat healthy are that it's too expensive. That's number one. It's expensive to eat healthy. And the other thing is I don't have time to cook. So those two things really can get in the way of making healthy choices and really diving into preserving the integrity of your food. So that's why I wanted to do this with you today, so you have a good, solid understanding of how you can save money without, without compromising the integrity of your food, and how you can save time by taking some shortcuts, again, without compromising the integrity of your food, without turning to processed foods and junky foods. There are plenty of ways to do that. So what I have here is a produce section, a dairy section, a protein section, some spices, and then some grains, because these are key staples to any healthy living plan. A few things that I want you to know are, first and foremost, when you're shopping in the produce section, it's important to remember that how dark the color of your food is key to how nutrient dense it is. And so when you're looking at, particularly at produce, at lettuces, for example, an iceberg lettuce is going to be almost colorless, whereas kale and Swiss chard and beet greens and mustard greens, those things are really, really dark colored. So those are going to be more nutrient dense. And the same applies to berries, for example. Strawberries are obviously very good for you. They're lighter in color. If you look at blackberries or blueberries, raspberries, they get darker. And so again, they are more nutrient dense. So you want to make sure you fill your refrigerator with dark leafy greens. Okay, that's huge. That's important to blood flow. That's important to anti-inflammatory. That's important to how well your body is able to repair what it needs. It's important to your digestion. Okay, and so when we're looking at things like that, so let's go back to lettuces, for example. A lot of people lean on my iceberg lettuce because it is crunchy and people want the crunch. And those darker lettuces are either very coarse and very fibrous, which there is a trick to that, which I'll share with you, or they are baby greens and they're soft and they don't give you that crunch in your salad, for example. So we look for things like this. I love Organic Girl, that brand, but there's all kinds of other greens. So these are protein greens, a variety of greens. It's sweet pea leaves and kale leaves and some bok choy and baby spinach, all baby greens. This one is super greens, and it has red and green Swiss chard. It has arugula, which I absolutely love. That's very, very flavorful. That's an herb, a green herb that's very nutrient packed as well. So the nice thing about these is they're very easy to just pick up and throw in a salad bowl, right? You don't have to really do any prep. They're triple washed. You don't have to do much to them. You just pick them up and throw them in a salad bowl. You pick them up and throw them in a blender with a smoothie, because those baby greens really just dissolve. They disintegrate and become flavorless in a smoothie really quickly, but you still get the benefit of the nutrients. If you need that crunch in your salad, romaine is a really good place to go, right? It's not quite as light colored as iceberg. And these are romaine hearts, so they're a little bit lighter, but romaine lettuce, it gets really dark too, and that packs that crunch that a lot of people are looking for. Let's take broccoli, for example. Broccoli can look really daunting when you go, and the same applies to cauliflower. You see this big head of broccoli or a big head of cauliflower, and you think, yeah, well, I have to chop that up and do all this stuff to it before I can use it. This is okay. This is a good shortcut of turning to broccoli florets and just using this. It takes all of the work out of it. You can steam it, you can Stir fry it. You can do anything to it. It's all just ready to go. Throw it in a salad. If you want something a little bit different, we love broccolini. That's really yummy. We love that in our house. And so even this doesn't take a whole lot of prep. Of course, you wash it and then take the rubber bands off, lie it on a cookie sheet with some parchment paper and stick it in the oven. And then you have roasted broccolini, which is delicious. But add a little bit of salt and pepper to it or some herbs. And I mean, it's ready like that. It's super quick and it cannot be easier than that. Dinosaur kale, that's another thing that we love in our house. There's a couple things that I'll share with you that we do. So this, again, we talked about lettuces being a little bit more fibrous. Some people look at kale and go, oh, I don't know what to do with that. So you can cut this up and put it on a cookie sheet on parchment paper and stick it in the oven and bake it until it gets crispy. Turn it every once in a while. It'll get crispy and then you have kale chips and those are delicious. I kid you not, the first few times I made these for my daughters when they were younger, from the oven to the stovetop, just taking it out, it was almost gone before I got it, before I even put it down, because it's so delicious. Another thing you can do if you want to put it in your salad is you put it in a bowl and you take an avocado and you put the avocado in the bowl and you massage it. And when you massage it, you break up those fibers and it becomes really soft. And then it's wonderful. It's flavorful. It doesn't have that coarse texture anymore that can turn a lot of people off. Buying kale like this is super cheap also. So that's a really good place to go. Zucchini is great. Zucchini is nice to have around because you can slice it up and use it to dip in hummus. You can chop it up and put it in a stir fry. You can chop it up and put it on a pizza. There's all kinds of things you can do with zucchini. It's super easy. Put it in a salad. And you can even find things like this that are already chopped for you. There's nothing wrong with taking that shortcut. The only thing to be aware of is that it goes bad a little faster. So you have to know that you're going to use it pretty soon. Again, mushrooms, here's a shortcut. They're pre-sliced, right? Nothing wrong with that. It makes it super easy. You open the package, throw it in a saute pan. While we're talking about mushrooms, a few things. They are hugely anti-carcinogenic, which means they help protect your body against cancer. It also helps to fight off cancer for people who already have cancer. So these are really good things to have in your body. They're one of the very few foods where we can get some vitamin D from a food source. And we all know we need more vitamin D. Most people are low in vitamin D. Here's a trick, because you'll find what's not included here is a whole lot of oil. I do have some oils in my home, typically avocado oil, sesame oil, grapeseed oil, and olive oil. I use very, very little of those. I don't really use them for cooking because I use things like mushrooms and onions will do the same thing. So you slice them up, you put them in a pan, put it on medium heat, put a lid on top, and just leave it there. And you don't have to stir it. You can just let those juices kind of start to sweat out. And once they do, then you've got this wonderfully flavorful jus. They don't stick into the pan when it's like that. And then you throw your other veggies in there on top of it, and you don't need any oil at all in your pan. It doesn't stick. What else here? So potatoes. Guess what? Potatoes are your friends. This is not a carb-free diet by any means. Healthy living does not have to mean low carbs. We really need carbs. Carbs are an energy source for us. I tell people all the time, we are not a protein deficient country. We are a fiber deficient country. And so when we shift that paradigm between what we hear so prominently of eat more protein, eat less carbs, we really start to see a positive impact on our body systemically, which then, because we're addressing the inside, then we end up seeing the difference on the outside that so many of us are trying to get to. We start to see the weight loss happen because that inside is healthy. So carbs are your friends. Healthy carbs are, complex carbs are your friends, and potatoes are part of that family. Potatoes are nutrient dense. They contain potassium. They contain fiber. You want to eat the skin, just wash them. These are a really good thing to buy organic, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Then sweet potatoes are fantastic, loaded with beta carotene, which is vitamin A, loaded with vitamin C, loaded with fiber. You can bake them, you can steam them, you can mash them, you can do all kinds of things with sweet potatoes, and you really get a good nutrient-dense source of food here. And those are not expensive. Fresh garlic is a big deal. Fresh garlic is a heart protector. It contains allicin and glutathione, which are both really important for the function of a healthy heart. And we hear about that garlic being healthy for your heart, and that's part of the reason why. It also helps to protect your immune system. Corn, again, there's nothing wrong with corn. Corn is one of those things that you do want to buy organic. This is roasted corn. It's frozen. And when we look at vegetables, some things can be off season. Some climates, it's really hard to find in-season vegetables. And so we buy organic because these can often even be a more nutritious source. Frozen vegetables are picked closer to when they are vine ripened. What that means is when something is left on the vine, something is left in its growing state until it is ready to eat, it is at its most nutrient-dense place. Often, and who's seen green bananas, right? I mean, we all do, because often vegetation is picked green, and then it's allowed to ripen off the vine. And what essentially is happening is it's just changing color. It's not really ripening. It's not becoming more nutrient dense as it changes color and becomes more recognizable. So by the time we get it into a grocery store, even when it is organic, it's lost some nutrient density to it. So frozen vegetables can be a really good source for preserving the nutrients. Again, corn is fine and has its own benefits. If it's organic, just because corn is one of those things that's overproduced and can be kind of abused. So avocado, fantastic. So let's talk for a second about the difference between non-GMO, organic, and conventionally grown. So conventionally grown means that the farmers are using pesticides, they're doing whatever they need to do to keep things growing and to maximize profit on what they grow. Non-GMO means that the foods were not at any point genetically modified. What happens a lot is that we figured out how to modify the DNA, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about the science of it, but modify the DNA of plants so that bugs don't want to eat it. And so it keeps the bugs away naturally, but it's not really natural, right? Because we're changing the DNA. What can happen in our bodies and when we eat a whole lot of GMO food is that our bodies all of a sudden don't recognize it as food, doesn't know what to do with it. And at best, it doesn't absorb all the nutrients that it is capable of, the body's capable of absorbing, because it doesn't recognize it. Organic, non-GMO means we haven't done that to it. Organic means it is non-GMO. It also means that it has not been saturated in pesticides. Doesn't mean no pesticides were ever used. It just means it falls below a certain parts per million that is considered acceptable. Or considered negligible. So what do we do, right? I mean, that's when we start to really look at cost, because organic foods can cost more. The certification process for the farmers is expensive. And they have to find other ways to protect the vegetation from bugs. So it does get a little bit more expensive. So what we can do is we turn to the Environmental Working Group and their website. We go there, and every year they put out two lists, a Dirty Dozen and a Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen tells us 12 things every year that are foods that we should really try to avoid eating conventionally grown, that we should always try to buy organic whenever possible. Strawberries, for example, are usually at the top of that list. White potatoes, russet potatoes specifically, are usually at the top of that list. And those are really, because the skin is a little bit thinner, because of the way it's grown, those can really be saturated in pesticides, and it's best to try to buy them organic. The Clean 15 are 15 items that are safe to eat conventionally grown because they just don't absorb pesticides. Avocados are usually near the top of that list. It has that nice thick skin, it's not very porous, and pesticides just don't usually permeate that skin, and you don't end up consuming that. So it's an important thing to look at. If you're trying to eat more conscientiously and you're also trying to watch your budget, those two lists are very, very helpful. And one thing I do want to say is it's important to know that it's better to eat conventionally grown plants. So if you're looking at blueberries, it's better to eat conventionally grown blueberries than to not eat blueberries at all. So keep that in mind as well. Rinse them really well, and just know that you still do benefit, even if it is conventionally grown. Speaking of blueberries, I buy my blueberries frozen. Anybody who buys a lot of berries knows that if you buy them fresh, they go bad very quickly. So if I'm buying raspberries, I love fresh raspberries. I eat them pretty much the same day, and I eat the whole little box, or within 2 days, because they go bad very quickly. If you buy them frozen, you don't have to worry about that. Now, it does change the texture a bit. So for some people like myself, I don't care much for frozen raspberries. I love them fresh. Blueberries, I don't tend to eat them just out of the bag. I put them in things. This is a really great package because it's 2 pounds of blueberries. And we do go through a lot of blueberries in my house that are frozen. And this bag right here costs $7.99. So for 2 pounds, I mean, you buy a pint of blueberries in the grocery store fresh, and it's usually about $4 or $5. So you can see how that really does save you money. And then you can control how much of it you're consuming it every day. These can go in a smoothie. They can go in oatmeal. They can go on top of a salad. All kinds of options there. Here's another really good grab and go. We're talking about time savers too, right? Cuties, these are fantastic. Again, these are organic. And they're super easy to peel. They're small, so they're not a big time commitment. You don't have to spend a lot of time peeling them or a lot of time eating them. They're really good grab and go foods. And then one other thing is shelled edamame. So we do in the shell and shelled. The shelled I like because, again, you can throw them on a salad. You can throw them in a stir fry. You can throw them in, make like, edamame and rice mix, and they're fantastic. They're super, these are a really, really great protein source, among many other things. Those are something I buy frozen. That's another thing. Soy is something I buy organic. Okay, let's talk protein here. Protein. So that's another concern for people who are kind of becoming a little bit more plant-centric. So maybe you're not 100% vegetarian, maybe you're not 100% plant-based, but you're thinking along those lines that you need to minimize meat. We all know that even the American Heart Association says to minimize red meat on our plate, that is not good for our heart, right? So animal proteins are super highly inflammatory and really hard on our arteries. And so they contain saturated fat, they inflame our arteries. And so those two things together, we end up with cholesterol and arteries that are too inflamed to move. And we end up with a recipe for disaster. So healthy proteins, you get so much protein from plants, we just don't even know. I mean, there's protein in broccoli, there's protein in everything sitting here. And so by the end of the day, it all adds up. So what are some good sources? Edamame we talked about. Another source is tofu. Sprouted is best. This one happens to not be sprouted, but always organic. And then tempeh. What the heck is tempeh, right? A lot of people don't even know. Tempeh is a fermented soybean. And it comes in a block like this. And so if I take it out of the package, it's a nice firm block. And what we do with tempeh and tofu, a lot of people don't know what to do with it, and it's bland and it's gross, right? And so we have to flavor it so that it tastes halfway decent. You can do lime or lemon on it. You can put a little bit of, one of the things we like to use is gluten-free, low-sodium, organic tamari, which is soy sauce. That adds really good flavor. You definitely want to watch that low sodium piece, but it adds really good flavor to things like this. And then, the tofu, you can saute it, you can press it to press some of that liquid out. You can bake it. We like to bake the tempeh. Tempeh has a more meaty texture. So you cut it up or slice it, and it's like eating a meat almost. You can even crumble this up and turn it into like a taco meat or ground meat type of source. And that is fantastic. There's so much good in there for you. And this little package is, in the ballpark of $2 to $3, depending on where you live. And that's huge. I mean, the savings in that, when you think about buying this or buying, chicken breast, for example, I mean, that's going to cost you $8, $9, $12. This is $2 to $3. So it really can save you money. Beans are another one. Most beans are, 99 cents to $1.29, somewhere in that range. Chickpeas, fantastic. Pinto beans are another really good one. We usually have lots of black beans around here. Navy beans and lentils. These are all go-tos. And you can work these into just about anything during our day and get some really good protein from that. Nuts are another great source of protein. I recommend buying them raw and unsalted. We want to minimize the added salt, minimize added sugars, and really start to look for those words on your packaging. These are a great resource. These are high in zinc, which is another protector for our immune system. Another little fun fact about zinc is that zinc helps to preserve and even promote testosterone in men and in women. So if that's something that you're thinking about, if you're getting to an age where you're starting to watch those numbers start to falter a little bit, there's a lot of food resources where we can really impact that. And our bodies love us for it. Milk. So plant-based milks are the way to go. We use a lot of almond milk around here. We also use oat milk, cashew milk, hemp milk, sometimes soy milk, not as often, and occasionally coconut milk. And sometimes it's a combination because the combinations can really be delicious. You want to look for unsweetened and organic when you can. There are questions at times about, doesn't almond milk negatively impact our water supply? That's a whole other video, but the quick answer is it's significantly less than the water it takes to produce milk from a cow. So that's just something interesting to know. What about yogurt? A lot of people love yogurt for breakfast, right? So this is Forager, a brand of plant-based yogurt. This is made from cashew milk. You'll notice that it is unsweetened and plain because you can add your own stuff. You don't need to buy yogurt that has all of that already added. If you pick up yogurt, even plant-based yogurt, the really delicious flavored kinds that you see that really catch your attention, key lime or key lime pie yogurt or whatever those are, and you look at the sugar content on the back and compare that to a pint of Ben & Jerry's, often it's the same. And we don't realize it. We think we're eating something healthy. So that's something really good to know. This can be a little bit more expensive, but it doesn't take much, right? We're also thinking about quantity here. And the value that we're putting in our body. And you think about the whole big picture where you're saving money. So if you end up buying something like this, but you're not buying red meat, you're not buying chicken, you're not buying a whole bunch of cheeses and those sorts of things. You're not buying a lot of processed foods that keep us hungry. You invest a little bit more in something like this, and ultimately that bill at the end of the day is lower. So this is really good. You can sweeten it with berries. You can sweeten it with a little bit of date syrup. You can sweeten it with a little bit of pure maple syrup, or even organic raw honey, and then add other yummy things to it. Something I want to show you is, because cheese is a hard one, right? It's a hard one for us to give up. So this is a really good go-to. This is Kite Hill Ricotta. It's made from almonds. The thing about cheeses is we want to read the package, right? We want to read the ingredients, because a lot of plant-based cheeses are pure oil. And if you start to read those ingredients, you'll see. You want to make sure, again, talking about the integrity of your food, you want to make sure you're buying things that are serving you. When you pick something up, think, is this good for me? Is this harmful for me? Okay? And when you start to read ingredients, you start to notice that. This is made from almonds, okay? And this is fantastic stuff. So again, a little more expensive. This is a treat around here. It's not something that we always have available, but I wanted to make sure that I had it to show you today. Grains. So yes, grains, we need grains. We need good, healthy grains. Quinoa is something that we have. It's not in this list, or not in this grouping here, but quinoa is fantastic. Brown rice, and what I have here to show you is organic frozen brown rice. This is a good cheat, right? This is a good shortcut. Rice takes a while to cook. Not everybody has an Instapot, right? So for those of us that don't, you can get some frozen brown rice, keep it in your freezer, and heat it up on the stove top. Do not put plastic in the microwave, please, whatever you do. But you can heat this up on your stove top, and then you've got a really good healthy grain. Why is brown rice better than white rice? It has to do with the color, right? Again, black rice is even better than brown rice. But white rice, the difference there is that brown rice has that, what makes it brown is that each grain has a husk on the grain. That husk is your fiber, right? And the white part inside is the simple carb. Together, they create a complex carb. When we take that brown husk off and process it to have fluffy, soft white rice, we don't have any fiber anymore. We just get what the body processes as sugar. So that's part of it. The arsenic of brown rice is also, some there, because that can be a question. There's arsenic in rice. White rice is much higher in arsenic than brown rice, so brown rice is the way to go. Oats are, again, another really good one, and you might think of these, who has time for oatmeal in the morning, right? But there are a number of ways to incorporate these into your diet. You can make oatmeal in the morning if you have time. You can make overnight oats, so you put a scoop of oats in a mason jar with some plant milk, maybe some berries, or maybe a scoop of peanut butter, and it's delicious the next morning. It is going to be heartier than cooked oats, but it's super yummy and it's very satiating. It's a great breakfast to start. You can even put a scoop of your complete protein powder in there and have chocolate oats in the morning. It's really yum. Anyhow, one other thing to look for is gluten-free on oats. Part of what we're doing here is gluten-free, and so oats are by nature gluten-free. They are often grown in fields that are right next to wheat fields, and so there's cross-contamination, which is why you see oats at times that are certified gluten-free. If you're not celiac, that's not a super big deal, but if you are sensitive to gluten and you are trying to purge your system, then that can be something important to look for. Okay, pastas, right? We have a love for pasta in our home. So here we have brown rice pasta. We want to look at the ingredients, and so when we're looking at any of this stuff, we want to look, okay, what are the ingredients? How many, you look for 5 or less. That's a good kind of general rule to go by. So if you look here, it's organic brown rice flour and water, right? That's all it is. So even though it is in a box, even though it's not in its original state. We call this minimally processed. So that is a different qualification than our processed foods. So there's nothing in here that we don't recognize. It's good, it's organic, it's good stuff. Bean pastas are another really good one, which can become a source of protein as well. This one's made out of chickpeas. So that's something else to look for. There's a wide variety these days. And the texture is a little bit different, so if you're not familiar with it, play with it. But they're really great as long as you're expecting that texture change. Sauce. So here, I mean, obviously, the best thing in the world is a pot of fresh tomato sauce that you have made by hand. You've squeezed those tomatoes with your own hands, and it has sat there on the stovetop and cooked and absorbed flavor all day long. But again, a lot of us don't have the time to do that these days. We live busy lives, and so we can look for things that are in a jar. And again, you want to read the ingredients, right? This definitely has more than 5 ingredients, but what we have is in this list is everything that is recognizable. I know what every one of these ingredients are: organic dried basil, organic oregano, organic garlic, diced tomatoes. Everything's organic and everything is a food, and that's important. Okay, there are no preservatives in here. There are no there's nothing added, anything that we shouldn't be eating. Same thing with salsa. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Salsa is a big deal around here, right? And so breakfast tacos are a big deal. Spices. So this is a big one for me, nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast it has sort of it's compared to kind of like a Parmesan flavor. And we can put it on just about anything. And again, this container is about $15. So that's kind of pricey. But this container, it's going to last you a long time. It takes a scoop. Let me just show you here. You take a scoop like this. It's flaky. It doesn't take a whole lot, right? So this can last quite a long time. And it really is a good investment. It is loaded with amino acids. It's loaded with B vitamins. And it's a great source of B12 for people who are not eating meat. And it tastes wonderful. Like you put it on here and these little chunks, and then you have this crust, and oh, so good. Turmeric, anti-inflammatory, right? Our spices are super important. It keeps our food enjoyable. It kind of taps into that pleasure center of our brain and reminds us why we love eating, why our food is delicious. Turmeric also has a super important function for anti-inflammatory function. But one key thing that a lot of people don't know is it has to be paired with black pepper, or it's not what we call bioavailable. Our bodies don't absorb it. So put them together. If you're putting some turmeric in your food, put some black pepper in it too. It doesn't have to be spicy. It doesn't have to be a lot. Crushed red pepper helps to speed your metabolism. Italian seasoning, which is a blend of all the fabulous Italian herbs: oregano, garlic. Oregano, basil, rosemary, sage, and marjoram are in here. Those are all fantastic. Fennel seed. Fennel seed is really good for digestion, right? It can be a strong flavor, so you mix it into something, right, where either if you don't love it, it's masked a little bit. We put it in our pizza crust, and it's so good. Rosemary, and then what about salt, right? So all salt is salt, all sodium is sodium. So you want to be watchful of that, especially if you have any heart or circulatory issues. Himalayan pink salt is nice. The thing about this is when you buy it in rocks, and you have to grind it. So you end up using less than if you're just kind of shaking a salt shaker over your food. Let me grab a couple more things that I want to mention before we finish up today. That I forgot to leave out. These two things, okay, let's talk about nut butters. A lot of people say, oh, can I eat peanut butter? The answer is yes. But I want you to notice that A lot of peanut butter has this floating inch of oil at the top or half inch. That's a good thing, okay? Because what that means is that there's nothing else added to it. You come down here and you read the ingredients, it's organic roasted peanuts, and it contains 1% of or less salt. When we see peanut butter that is all blended up and ready to eat straight out of the jar, read on the back and you'll see it has added palm oil and sugar. Those two things keep it from separating. So that's a big red flag, right? Why would we want to add more oil to this when there's already all of this in it? So what I do is I take it and open it up and take it straight over to the trash can, and I dump most of that oil out. And then mix it up. And then you don't need all that oil, and you still get the benefits of the peanuts. Another thing is tahini, which works the same way. There's a big layer of oil up here. I do the same thing, pour most of that oil out and mix it up. Tahini is it's ground sesame seeds, and this has a great flavor. It's really fun to make sauces out of for any of this. We use salads or stir fry, or it's great. It's a great resource. And sesame seeds are super good for you. They're a high protein source. They're high in omega-3s, and those are things that you want. And something else I want to show you is this stuff. It's called Just Egg. It's made from mung beans. Again, it's not the most ideal, right? It's still this is far from a mung bean source, right? And so, but it's all good, pretty good ingredients. There's not anything in here I don't recognize. It's a really good alternative to eggs. So a lot of people have those cravings for eggs in the morning. Scrambled eggs, it holds the texture of a scrambled egg really well. And you get the protein from the mung beans, so it's still nutritious. You can also do scrambled tofu. Sometimes it takes some working up to do that if you're not familiar with it. So this is a good, what we call transitional food. We see that in Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat, all the meatless sausages, those kinds of things. We want to be watchful of those because they can be a really good transition food from a strong meat-eating diet into a more plant-based diet. They're good things to try. They do tend to still be high in sodium and sometimes other additives. So just be aware of that while they are a good transitional food, they are not necessarily the most optimal food for us. That's it. That's what I've got for you today. If you have questions, we are here for you to answer them. If you want more information about any specific thing or how to find things in your grocery store, then we're here for you for that too. And we look forward to learning about your grocery experiences as you go forward. But just know there is no reason that you have to spend more to eat healthy. In fact, it can save you money. And there is no reason that you have to spend more time in order to eat healthy. There are plenty of healthy shortcuts to take without bombarding yourself with processed foods.